Welcome to Sachs Realty's first podcast with our series called Inspired. And today's guest, we're excited that we have Jim O'Connor in the studio. And for many of you, Jim O'Connor means absolutely nothing, but for a few, it meant absolutely everything. You see, Jim O'Connor has been in the real estate business since 1953 when he became a licensed realtor. And then in 1961, he founded his brokerage that went on to become O'Connor, Piper, and Flynn. And for 37 years after starting that business, he ran O'Connor, Piper, and Flynn with him and his partners, over 98 offices, over 3,200 licensed realtors, hundreds of employees in 5 states. And we're really proud to have him here this morning. I'd like to introduce the man who goes by Jim O'Connor. Good morning.
Good morning, Todd. It's great to be with you.
We're really happy to have you here. So we're excited. We want to hear everything from the beginning. So if you could just take it away and take us back to your childhood.
Well, all right, that'd be fine. And my childhood was a long time ago. So I was born in Baltimore and raised here. When I was 9 years old, my family moved to Annapolis because my father became governor of the state of Maryland. So for 8 years, I lived in Annapolis and commuted every day to school in Baltimore. I was driven in grade school up here, but in high school, I got up at 5 in the morning and went down to the WB&A train station just down the street from where we lived. And I got the train up to Camden Yards, the present site of the Baltimore Orioles. And so I took the train at 6 o'clock in the morning out of Annapolis and got up to Camden Yards at 7. And then I took a streetcar from Camden Yards up to Charles and North Avenue, where I transferred to another streetcar, and that took me up to Bedford Square, up at Cold Spring Lane and Charles Street, where I waited for my school bus, Loyola High School, and graduated from there in 1946. Went on from there to Loyola College. In the meantime, I met my wonderful, wonderful wife. When I graduated in 1949, 3 years later, I was in an abbreviated class of all the returning veterans from the war and so forth. The Loyola College at that time, which is a university today, accelerated the program so that we all moved through it much quicker. And so in July of 1949, I graduated from college. The next day I went to work, and I love work. I love working. And so I started my career that way.
And what was your first job?
I worked for a building supply company. And so I sold bricks and mortar and cement and the various ingredients that builders use. And frankly, that's what got me interested in real estate. Coming from a family and a father who was, pretty prominent here, I really had a desire to get off on my own. And I wanted to prove something to myself of whether I was able and capable to handle things myself. I didn't want to have to depend on his reputation and so forth. We were a very close family. I was with the Monumental Brick I'm just looking here, for 3 years, or 2 years. My family, my wife and I, and 2 children at that time, we moved up to Binghamton, New York, where we lived for several years until I was transferred down to New York City. So I worked in the Big Apple for several years. I loved it. I loved the activity. I loved everything about it. And But the family was growing in the meantime. I had child number 3 and child number 4 in the next couple of years after that. Satisfied myself that I was ready to go, that I had accomplished what I was wanted to do, and with the family responsibilities and so forth, we came back to Baltimore, and I took a position with a real estate company in their mortgage department because I wanted to learn the nuances of the financing end of real estate, both residential and commercial and so forth. So I stayed with that company for a few years, and I was with them for 4 years. But in the meantime, while I was with them, I really had the urge to sell. So I arranged for a position with that company where I could basically go out and call on builders and call on realtors and to provide for them financial assistance on the different things they wanted. But in doing that, I got the real urge to sell real estate. And so I was double working, you might say, between that and selling real estate.
So you had a full-time job and you
Yeah.
became a licensee as a part-time?
Well, I wasn't too much part-time.
Okay.
So, I mean, I like work long hours, and like I said, I really enjoy working, and the main thing is I just love seeing as many people and situations as I could, and so that went on fine until I got an individual here in town contacted me and asked me if I would consider coming with his company as a sales manager. So I went with that firm, and I was with them for 4 years. I enjoyed that. That gave me my first experience with really managing people and assisting them and helping them in any way that I could. That company was not real active, so it was a question of having to sort of rejuvenate them a little bit and, juice it up a little bit, so to speak.
What was the aspect at that point that you enjoyed so much about being an agent?
I just love people, Todd, and I just love working. And what I loved was the challenge that every day was different. Every day was a new challenge. When I got up in the morning to go to work, you didn't know what the day was going to entail or what was going to develop during the day, and I just loved the almost the suspense that was in it, because even though I was a very organized individual, by the way, always have been, and so I planned the night before what the minimum that I wanted to accomplish, that next day. The primary enjoyment is just working with people and their needs, help them to develop, really getting a sense from them what they wanted and to try to, match that up. Many times they didn't realize what they wanted, and so it put me and people like me in a position where we could help them sort of change their viewpoint a little bit. Maybe they were overshooting their needs and what they could afford. So it was just that challenge to tailor the situation to that particular couple or person or whatever it was be.
Do you remember what the average age was of a first-time buyer back then?
I would say in the mid-30s probably.
Okay.
Because I was working I was still quite young.
Okay.
Which makes me digress a little bit. Let me tell you just one little story. You mentioned I became a realtor in 1953, I think.
Yes.
And I remember the very, very first real estate annual banquet that was held. In those days, it was a black tie, male only event.
Wow.
And I can remember going downtown to the hotel. I'd never been to it before. It was the first year. And I walked in that room, and it was here all these black coats and all the men, and no women, not one woman present. And the thought certainly occurred to me. This doesn't make sense. And I was the youngest person in the room. I remember that because I was only about 23, 24 at that point.
Wow.
And that was really considered very young in those days because the typical company, had middle-aged and up agents and salespeople. So if you were young like I was at the time, it was a rarity. So after I had spent some years with the company I was with as a sales manager, I decided it was time to go in the business for myself. And there was a very, very successful man here in town named by the name of Daley Burns. He was the sales manager for the Russell T. Baker Company, which at that time was clearly the largest residential company in Baltimore. So Daley and I decided to go into business. What I did, I was the person to, like I said, I was a pretty well organized person, but had to locate where we were going to go, what we were going to put in it to furnish, decorating, all that kind of business. So I was very, very involved in that. And Daley was more of a, with the agents, sales manager, so forth and so forth. He didn't have the background or experience to do that. So that fell on me, which was a very, very good experience, particularly as we grew and offices, multiplied. So Daley and I met, and we decided to start our own business.
How did that conversation come about? Did you go have lunch one day? Did you, at what point did you say, hey, do you want to try and do this?
Having lunch one day.
Okay.
That type of thing. And the big question was, how are we going to do it? Well, how are we going to get the money to do it? So the decision was, we'll each put up $2,500. I remember that. And Daley said, I'll have mine another month from now. So, it was, times were a little lean in a way. So with about $2,500 and his $2,500, which of course he eventually had there, we opened up, we decided to open up our company, and I had located in the meantime a location on North Charles Street in the 2600 block. And that was a group home, and the office that was available was on the second floor. It was a modest office. I mean, it wasn't, nobody really knew us. So we opened the doors, I think it was in March of the particular year, that first year. And there were only Daley and me, my secretary from the company I had been with, and his secretary followed him. So we had, actually the staff was just as large as management at that point. There was a fella here in town by the name of Bill Flynn. He called me on the phone and said, I hear you and Daley are doing something. His background was in the development area. He was in sales. He was a great salesman. And he handled Realty's products.
Okay.
So here we had that arm of the business where new homes, and of course with the new home sale, 9 times out of 10 the person buying the new home had a house to sell. So it was a double header. So I remember that Bill and Daley and I met for dinner at the old Penn Hotel. You're too young to remember the Penn Hotel.
Yeah, I don't remember that.
But we met at the Penn Hotel and had dinner, and because Daly was meeting Bill for the first time at that dinner. So basically, it was sort of an interview type dinner. And but but we were very satisfied and invited Bill to come in with us. And we never ever regretted that decision.
Did you make the decision right there at that
No.
restaurant that night, or what happened when you?
No, because in fairness to Bill and to Daly, I suggested, now let's just sleep on to, what we've talked about here, and so let's talk again either tomorrow or the next day. So we did that, and I can remember Bill saying, I would love to join, and I remember I'm saying, I'd love to have you join. And Daly was the same way. So that's how the firm was created. So we started in that particular case as partners.
Was it even third and a third and a third at that point?
Third, and third.
Wow.
We were equal partners, and of course the main thing, Todd, was for us to decide who does what, because we all were salespeople, and some maybe a little bit, some maybe a little bit better, and maybe I was a little better organized than them, that type of thing. So I remember we met one afternoon. I remember where we met, as a matter of fact, and we sat down and said, "No, let's decide what needs to be done, and let's decide who's the best one to, in what area to do what."
Now at this point it was 5 of you. It was your 2 assistants that came with you, and then the 3 partners.
Well, there was a salesman that came with Daly, came over, and that was it. Yeah, there were 6 of us.
And 3 chiefs.
3 chiefs, and two staffs, and 1 salesperson. 1 agent. So we started to get rolling. I remember something that we did in the early stages to convey the message that, hey, we're legit, even though we're new.
No one had heard of you at this point.
I mean, so I remember we started a campaign and it was centered on it's what's behind the sign that counts.
Okay, that was your slogan.
That was our slogan, and so we kept pushing that, and the double meaning that can come from that. It can be the agent behind the sign, it can be the company behind the sign, it can be the property that's being offered. It's what's behind the sign that counts.
All of that.
So it was a cute little thing to get some attention, and then we did another thing. We sat down and said, look, in order to become a formidable presence in the market, or a real player in the market, we need agents, and because the agents are the lifeblood of the company. They really, no ifs, ands, or buts. And so we sat down and said, let's each think about 4 or 5 individuals that we would love to have with us, even though they're with other companies. But they have to be friends of yours, and they have to, it's not like a cold call with them. It was someone that's with one of the other companies, and me, I knew some. So we each took on the obligation, or the assignment is a better word, of contacting these individuals and seeing if by any chance they would consider coming with this new company. And that was one of the key things, really, in the fact that we were new was not a negative, it was a positive. Our enthusiasm for what we were doing, our determination for what we were doing was evident when we talked to people. I think we were able to convince them that, hey, this is a very, this is our business, our lives depend on it, our livelihood depends on it, and, to put bread on the table at home and take care of the kids' educations and so forth. So this is a real serious business for us.
You had said also when we had met one time for lunch, you were telling me this story, and when you all had set out to get 4 or 5 agents apiece, it was almost like a competition because you wanted to.
Oh, absolutely.
You did not want to show up at this meeting. You had made mention. Maybe you could talk a little bit about. You had challenged each other that you were going to meet with a list of names and.
That's right. And I think it probably resulted in, let's say we took I forget now, 5 or 6 names we each put it in the hopper. So let's say there were 15 to 18 names. I think we actually attracted and had maybe half that number join us.
Wow.
Remember now, we knew these people, so it wasn't like we had to sell them on us or that. The main thing we had to sell them on was what our course of action, where we were going, what we wanted to do, and how important you are to us to be able to accomplish that for the company. So we sort of got our feet in the water that way. And
So you brought on 7 or 10 agents out of that
right.
maybe fifth pool of 15 that you had each handpicked.
I think after the first year, and we sort of doubled up on that effort. I mean, we were constantly recruiting.
Yeah.
And I would say after a year, we were probably in maybe the 25 agent situation.
Okay.
Now, remembering that the first 3 or 4 months of that year, we were really brand new. And so that was, we were satisfied with that.
Now, you had made mention that when you went to this banquet and it was all men, when you were recruiting these 15 agents, were there any women or were these all men as well?
Well, you better believe there were women.
Okay.
And I appreciated how good they were in the business. I mean, for men, what we see in the Me Too movement today, women are so good and natural in the business that it was ridiculous to overlook them. I can remember we started out, like I said, on the second floor of a group home down on Charles Street. We moved from there. We weren't there that long. And we moved from there right down to the old we moved out Towson. Dr. Burton's veterinary thing was at 716 York Road. So we moved from Charles Street to Towson. That was our first move because this is where the business and the future was going to be. And Midtown Baltimore was okay, but what business we were getting, listings or sales, weren't Midtown. They were up this way. So we decided to move out. Daly didn't want to. So we very amicably parted company. And Bill and I came out to the first floor of the Dog and Cat Hospital right down here in the 700 block of York Road. And we started there, and at that point, I'm going to say we had 20 or 25 agents at O'Connor, Burns and Flynn. I'm going to say that at least 15 or maybe 18 came with us out here.
Was it a clean break? I mean, at that point, you had 25 agents. Did he want something to part ways, or he just backed out?
Well, actually, we took the initiative because we decided we're going. I mean, that we're going to move up north, and so we did that. And he wasn't delighted about it, but I mean,
So you made a decision to just break off at that point.
Friends and good friends, and had been partners and all that.
So what was a young O'Connor thinking at that point? You were coming to the county.
Well, we were,
You and Flynn were.
yeah,
You had these ideals. I mean, what was going through your
that
your
we
mind
were
at that time?
a lot of excitement because we were quite convinced that we were moving into fertile territory, which there was not a dominant company really. Even though I mentioned Russell T. Baker and Company, they were a Baltimore City, but they were represented here certainly. But it was very fertile territory here, and so we went, as I say, the Dog and Cat Hospital, and I'll tell this little story. One day we're in the first floor, and we're sitting there, and all of a sudden in our office there was a lot of, well, they were cremating a dog
Oh no!
upstairs, and unfortunately something wasn't closed, or so we got. But that was I still remember that.
Right.
You don't forget things like that.
Sure.
Things went well for us, and we only stayed in that location. Well, we stayed there probably 2 years,
Okay.
and then we moved right up to the motel at the Beltway and York Road, where AAA is today. That was our office.
That was your headquarters.
Right, and at that point, we're still one office company, but it was a big office, and it didn't take long until we had 35, 40, 45 agents there. So our new location up here was a very good move, and it was it was a key because we had great
Visibility.
oh, did we ever? I mean, it's right there at the turnoff onto the Beltway and so
Right.
forth. So that was very good, and so from there we opened an office up on Padonia Road, small home back of where the shopping center. The house is still sitting there, and so we opened up a branch there, and we got enough agents in there pretty quickly to.
What were you doing at that point to recruit? Did you have someone that, or was it still?
We weren't quite ready to say hire a recruiter, or so we all were doing that. We all were.
Were you selling too at all, or?
Oh yeah, I'll never give that up.
Okay.
We went from there to Jacksonville,
Okay.
and we opened a branch in the shopping center right at Jacksonville, right off Delaney Valley Road. We hired a great manager for there, and when we started to attract agents from that area to come in, and that went well, to the point that encouraged us to go to Blair. The locals were not delighted that we were coming.
The competition.
Yeah, they weren't delighted. I mean,
They knew you were growing, you were expanding.
yes, they knew we were.
So when you opened up a new office, did you prepare and know who the manager would be, or have a couple agents that were in that area?
Yes.
Or you
Yeah.
did. So you had that all planned out as sort of a.
And we had some wonderful candidates for the manager's job because of our own, within our own ranks.
So you promoted within?
Yes, and we had some very, very good agents. And I need to go back and tell you one little story. I remember one day at 716 York Road, 1017 York Road, when we moved up to where AAA is now, and we had that whole building there. I mean, it was one-story building, but and I got a phone call, and this woman said, "I'd like to come in and talk to you." I didn't know her, so she came in, and in the course of the interview, I said, it came out that she had spoken to 3 companies prior to us. She said, but they didn't take her. And I said, I can't believe that. I said, you're perfect for this business. You're absolutely perfect for it. She became our leading agent. She was our leading agent for probably 4 or 5 years.
Wow.
She's still active today. She was O'Connor and Flynn's leading agent. In fact, one year what we did, she was so good that you know the big billboard at the Circle in Towson?
Yes.
That full billboard was her picture.
Wow.
I mean, and of course she loved that. So, and she was just a tremendous success, and still is. Another thing that we did, we decided that what can we do to make us different from our competitors? At that point, one of the individuals with our company had a real marketing knack. So he was our marketing manager, let's say. And we did a series of, I think, 6 ads. But the ads were for the purpose of being in Baltimore Magazine to get the business community aware of us. And we did these 6 ads over the course of 6 months, one a month. And they ranged from taking pictures of either us or our associates, but from Colt Stadium. I can remember sitting on the infield, sitting on the gridiron when that picture was taken, and we had some appropriate heading for it, and that came out in Baltimore Magazine, and then we did one at the Baltimore Museum of Art with a thinker, and we all sat there, and we're the thinkers, right alongside of the and we did the most notable one was, or not the most, they were all good, but we did one of Loch Raven, picture of Loch Raven, and we were sitting in a boat. We were sitting in a boat, a rowboat, and the caption said, when this is available for sale, we'll be there. And this is honest truth, Todd. I can remember going down to the county offices for something, whatever, zoning or whatever. And I'm sitting at the fellow's desk alongside of him. And there over on the wall, that ad was in his office on his wall.
That's great.
But there was a writing on it. And remember it said, when this is for sale, we'll be there. He had written on it, like hell, David, like hell they will. We did 6 of them, and they were dynamite.
And they were probably expensive at the time. That was a big commitment to be in the Baltimore Magazine like that.
Right, and that was probably after we had opened Belair and the one in Jacksonville, and down here we had at that point a couple offices here. We had an open office down in the Inner Harbor at that point, and so we were.
You were well on your way.
We were known.
So what was going on as your business was growing and you were bringing in more employees, which obviously drove your cost up and your expenses? So how were you handling that type of growth?
Well, at that point, Todd, the industry started to change. Technology came into play, working at home, and at that point, the presence of women in the real estate business, by the way, was 70% women, 30% male.
Wow.
Which is a pretty big difference from that.
Where it started.
Yeah. And so we were growing to a size then that we were being approached by companies to either not really by any local companies, but by national companies most of them were at that point were wanting us to become a franchisee. And that didn't really appeal to us as such. At that point, by the way, a big marketing uh, slogan that we had at that time, which to this day we actually have a trademark for, is the home team. When I left NRT, I made sure the home team came with
You
me.
kept that. Okay.
So let's do it that way. I say that franchises, be it Century 21 or ERA or, or Better Homes and Gardens. I can remember taking trips to out to Better Homes, because I didn't want to ignore the possibility. You never know.
Right.
You never know.
Something to learn or just know what's going on.
Right.
Really understanding you were probably at a size where you needed to pay attention to what was being presented to anybody for that matter.
Back in 1960, excuse me,
No.
1985. O'Connor, Piper and Flynn was formed in 1984. On January 16th, 85, this story appeared on the front page of the business section of the Wall Street Journal, and it says Baltimore Realty firms buck trend to national networks. So we were resisting the national networks. It says now O'Connor can concentrate on competing against the national chains. That article was a big wow for,
That gave you a lot of attention.
well, not only out there in the public, but within our own firm. I mean, our people were so proud that they were part of, something that got this attention.
At what point did you, I mean, obviously when you started your company, there was certainly a lot of uncertainty. You had a level of confidence in that you would be able to make it, but then there's still that chance that you might not.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
when you were going into this area where it was sort of the future and Daley had said he wasn't coming, at what point did you have at least a little more confidence that you thought that your business was actually making it?
Take this the right way. We were always confident that it was going to work.
All right. So you just,
We just assumed that. We just assumed that what we were doing was right. We worked hard. We worked many, many long hours. I know one of your questions on there was, did I ever take work home? And yeah, I took work home every night. Now, we had setbacks. I mean, to be sure. I mean, it wasn't all just, I mean, the recession came in. It was necessary to close a few offices. That was hard, very difficult. And remember that I told you about the office up in Jacksonville? I can remember Bill Flynn and I going up there with a truck. We had, times were tough then in the real estate business. And we got the truck, and he and I loaded the furniture from that office into the truck. And I remember driving the truck up to Blair and putting it down in the basement of the Blair office for storage until things broke. So, I mean, but it wasn't, I'd say, smooth sailing. I mean, we had some problems.
so you were in charge of more of the financial side?
And but then eventually we got to the size where we needed a chief financial officer, and we hired a guy from our accounting firm, and he was absolutely terrific for us. And he brought that discipline and that knowledge of his business to get us squared away.
Did you completely defer to him on?
Oh no.
No, okay.
No, I mean,
So you still remained the
Oh, yeah,
final decision on.
But he was a take charge kind of guy, so which is good. So no, we always gave people, that ability go on their own or decide on their own unless and until, it was something that was obviously bad.
Right.
So that went well, and then of course things kept going along that way, and these franchise companies were calling us. That was the main role I had too, was to sound them out. So finally that one day, I got a phone call from a fellow named Mike Good, and he said, "I'd like to come talk to you." So Mike and I met. Mike presented what they were able to. Now they wanted to buy us. So I met with Mike a number of times. I went up to Parsippany, New Jersey, which is where they were headquartered, and met with all of them. And so
Was it just you, or was it
just
Piper and
first,
Flynn?
Just me at first, and because I was sort of screening it and getting whatever, and then finally, it got to the point where it was really serious, and of course, what price they were going to pay was an important question. I remember going up there. Believe it or not, I went up there, took the train up. They had a car meet me at the train station and took me over to Parsippany. And I went in, and the head of NRT was a fellow named Bob Becker. And Bob Becker, he just had the attitude. Well, they were in the process then of acquiring major companies in major cities. That was their role then. So he made the pitch, and he said, "We'll pay you X dollars." And I said, "Well, thank you, but no thank you."
No thanks.
So I went back another time, and he had at that point, of course I had talked to the guys, and we were getting up there in years at that point. See, I'm at that point I'm 71 then.
Okay.
So it's getting up there a little bit. That's still young, but
I like to think that.
yeah,
Absolutely.
I guarantee you.
Okay.
And my main role was to negotiate the price, frankly. And so but I went up there to see him, and he said, "How about so and so?" And I said, "Well, in the meantime, I had a pretty good sense of what
What you would take at that point.
What are they going to pay Bryce Harper to sign up for the Nationals?
Okay.
He knows what he wants, and so I knew what we wanted. I said, "Mom, that's pretty good. That's pretty good." And so he said, "Well, here you are. Would you like to sign it now?" And I said, "Well, let me just think about that, so forth." So, and I left there and forgot to take it on purpose. And I can remember getting in the car. They had the person, and I'm in the car, and I see him running after the
Coming after you.
yeah. So, but fortunately, we got away. But finally, we dealt with it. See, a big part of all that, Todd, was, what's going to happen to O'Connor? What's going to happen to Piper? What's going to happen to Flynn?
Right. At that point, you still have a lot of pride in your brand that you've built, and you have people,
Well,
all these people that you're responsible for, and what happens to them, and
Well, two things were very important in the negotiations with them. One is we keep our name, and we keep our sign.
which is unheard of in the world of acquisitions, right?
Right. But they agreed to it.
Wow.
So we were still O'Connor, Piper, and Flynn. We still had our sign. After 5 years, I retired, and it felt very strange,
Yeah.
All of a sudden, that next day, it was strange, but it's life.
I think it would be. I mean, you put your whole life and everything that you did into this company, and now all of a sudden someone else is running it or owns it, and you're looking at the next day.
Yep. But it's, as I say, it's part of life. And
Yeah.
I got adjusted to it.
Yeah.
And I've made it a point of keeping myself very busy.
And your son Sean, and he's a broker, so he
Sean.
followed in Dad's footsteps.
Sean's a broker and doing well, and He occasionally asked me for help,
Yeah.
no, for advice. Uh, but I like that. I like that. I mean, I was that way. I listen to people, always listen to people. I think you get a lot of benefit from that. And like I said before, my opening comment almost, I just absolutely love people.
One of the reasons that I get so excited about this podcast and talking with people that have such great experience, and I've been in business for almost 30 years, and fortunately I've had some great mentors and people that have shared with me their journey and sort of given me great advice, and I feel like I'm still learning. What
That's very
advice?
important. I always approach things the same way.
That you're still learning?
You can still learn.
Yes. One of the neat things is I don't really think it matters where you are in your career, whether you're just graduating or whether you're taking on that new job, that new position, whether you're self-employed or whether you're working for a company. What advice would you give someone to follow every day to be better, to be more, and to be happy, and to find that happiness about their work life, or that balance?
I think the off the cuff, what I always use as a philosophy or as a culture or whatever the right word is to always be honest in my whatever dealings I have. If I tell you something, you can take my word for it. It's you know, and I want to be able to take your word, that type of thing, and work hard, work honest, and just keep working because, like I said, I keep saying I love people, I really do, and uh, that's why Me Too programs that exist today, or discrimination, or all that. I was very, very, very involved back with the National Association of Realtors in the human rights area. In fact, the Wall Street Journal picked up on that, and I'm very proud of this. We were the first, when I was chairman of the Equal Opportunity Commission for NAR, we formulated the first affirmative market agreement that HUD ever negotiated with a trade organization. And it became a model, and they've used that. And I was able to get the Baltimore Board to adopt it and the Maryland Association to adopt it as the first two boards to sign on to it. I'm very proud of that. But
That's something to be very proud of.
it comes back to the people. See, I get very concerned about people, and that's what motivates me. That's what keeps me going. My kids, I can't stop trying to help them.
But as far as the challenges, I mean, to have partners and to be able to move the business forward when you might not be getting along or understanding
That's a great part.
the different opinions or concepts.
Well, believe me, the individuals I was partners with, they had opinions, and but we would sit down and just talk it through, and maybe should we open that office or not, or is that too risky now, or do we really want to put that much money into that particular effort? But if you have partners or associates that you're comfortable and confident with, even though you'll disagree at times, and we disagreed at times, but we never had a bad argument or disagreement, never. And because, we're reasonable people and you sit down, you talk about it. And I'm not trying to take credit for this, I'm not, but I can remember Mike Good, I mentioned his name earlier. I remember he once said to me, Jim, of all the companies, and he was involved in just about most of them, he said he thought I accepted the new role better than a lot of the previous owners of other companies. And
I mean, as far as going into corporate.
exactly. And I did not have that much trouble. Now, I'll be honest, some of my partners weren't as quite as receptive as I was. Uh, and
What do
I
you
mean,
think what do you think made you so receptive to the idea that now
you ask good questions. You really do. That's a very good question. Remember I said I'm organization minded. Uh, NRT was a very I thought they were very sophisticated and, obviously they had, they could be better, but I appreciated what they could bring to the company and to the salespeople. And, aside from the personal benefits of selling, and certainly money was important, but we wanted to be sure that when we left the company, that we left it in better shape than it was when we got it.
that's nice.
And
You felt that was happening.
I think we accomplished that. I mean, I wouldn't have traded my career for anything. So, I mean, there were so many exciting times, and we were very big on company events, by the way, and very big.
As far as frequently or annually, or what did you
Oh, no,
consider?
we went from, having the big ship in the harbor and taking everybody out in the ship, and I can remember dressing up and and all the guys did. But that was typical. We did a lot of that. All I hear today, and I really hear it still from mainly of course, the old. It isn't like it used to be when you guys were here. Well, it can't be. It can't be. So,
Yeah.
and but they miss us.
You certainly managed a whole lot of agents. What advice would you give to someone who is just starting out in this business, uh, and is maybe not realizing that the full effect of it taking some time to get their business going to where they can actually pay their bills and grow their business?
See, Todd, I went through exactly that situation myself, and I didn't. I'd gone from a menial job to, now it's a question of what kind of commissions am I going to make, and it was slow at first, and like the first sale, you figure, hey, I've just made $800, or in those days, the average commission was the average sale price was probably $15,000,
Yeah.
and the commission was 5%. And then the realization, but it's 3 months from now until settlement. I clearly remember going on Friday nights, going back, and I had my pay for the week, and I would sit down with Betty, my wife, and we'd say, well, look, we have $70 here,
Okay.
and so much had to go here, and so much had to go there, and so much had to go there, and but we worked through it, and it was not easy. And what I did, by the way, this is off your question. I'll come back to your question. That's how I helped subsidize myself, because remember I said I got the mortgage background.
Yes.
I was able to go to and sell mortgages to different, for which I'd get a fee, and that was a godsend for me.
Yeah.
I mean, and frankly, it helped me get started in the business.
Right.
But But going back to your question, pick the right company, make sure the management's in place with the company you're going with, and the desire what they want to accomplish. Uh, it's so interesting. You mentioned Sean. Sean's totally different from me. I mean, his motivation and goal is very different from what mine was at that stage. He's just as correct as I was.
As an entrepreneur, what kept you up at night?
A wife and 8 kids.
Okay.
That was enough to keep me, keep me going. I was blessed with having a wife who accepted what I was trying to do. And
was there any point that she said, "Why are you doing this?"
No.
Or never?
Never. She was absolutely superb. And I mentioned to you before, I lost her 3 years ago.
Yes.
And but she never, I can honestly say this, she never complained.
Even through the tough times.
She never, ever complained. And she knew I was out there trying. And sometimes, it was really tough, doing it. And, but, just keep on keeping on.
How'd you keep yourself motivated in those tough times?
How did I?
Yes.
Because I get itchy. I mean, I like if I'm sitting at home, and I can't sit still very long. I just got to get going and doing something. I mean, that's.
So for the person that works all the time, how did you get to a point to where you were able? I mean, you raised 8 children.
Yeah, but see, and even in doing that, I never missed a ball game.
Okay.
Never missed an event they were in. Maybe I didn't make it at the start of the game, or and maybe I had to leave during the game. But I love my family, and I gave them a lot of attention, and still do.
Well, I tell you what, it's been fantastic. It's great to get to know you more, and
I've enjoyed it.
yeah, I really
I've enjoyed it. You know why I enjoy it? I think I enjoy it because hopefully this will help somebody, in some way. And, if some little advice I gave or can impart could help somebody, then I'm happy.
yes.
And so I thank you for it.
Oh, absolutely. It's a pleasure.
I'm delighted I did it.